Yeah, we don't have anything else to say.
We are live now. So Victor has so when he was on Primeagen, Victor had the One Punch Man shirt, and that was a hit because is it Sataman? Sataman? Am I saying it right?
I think
The name of
Saitama.
the
But
character.
anyway, I don't want
Sorry.
to pronounce. I'm in general refraining from pronouncing names that I'm not super familiar with because I
Yeah.
I cannot even pronounce like English names correctly. So let alone like other names. So it's a challenge. It took me
Right.
many months to figure out to pronounce my wife's name correctly, right? Of practice and practice and practice, and it's still a bit off. So it's just it's a skill I lack.
That's all right. But you're wearing Mickey Mouse today, so
That's right.
we're apparently. So Johanna was saying Mickey Mouse is going in the public domain pretty soon, or at least the earlier versions of him, right? So I had heard something where like Disney was bending the laws of copyright to their wills in order to preserve the Mickey
Laws of
Mouse
physics.
copyrights.
They're
Yeah.
bending the laws of space and time in order to
Yeah.
extend copyright an extra decade or 100 years.
Was I
It- it-
misinformed, or is it actually expiring now? It sounds like next year. You were saying the Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse is going in public domain.
yeah, that's what Victor said. Yeah. I think
That's
Victor
I
actually
just
tried to
googled
look
it
it
and
up.
saw it on Wikipedia. It might be completely, I like it might be the case, but might not be. Who knows?
Barring some new legal challenge from Disney, which they're the main drivers of U.S. copyright law, or the extensions rather.
Right.
Yeah. So you were saying Winnie the Pooh is Winnie the Pooh public domain now?
Yeah, just
Okay.
recently.
Yeah.
Is there a difference between what was the author? It was A. Milnes, the author, or
Yeah.
am I?
I think so.
Okay, cool. Well, is it his version of Winnie the Pooh that's public domain, or is it the?
Yeah,
'Cause-
not the Disney version. So you
Okay.
cannot copy the Disney cartoons, which are a different interpretation, if you like.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is why the horror film that's coming out will bear no relation whatsoever to Disney Pooh.
What's the name of this horror movie?
Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, I think.
I had not heard of this at all.
I've seen the trailer. It looks.
Oh
Me
my
too,
goodness,
it-
that
it-
is
it-
creepy. I should have looked.
No, it is fun. I think it's good that people are doing weird things.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, I like wild
appreciate
stuff.
weird things. Yeah, good.
They
Fun.
were clearly like ready to go with this film, though. As soon as it hit public domain, like we're going to release this ridiculous film,
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
so they could be the first.
I have a feeling Tigger in particularly could be particularly terrifying.
But Tigger is later. I don't think Tigger is out because Tigger was introduced a few. I don't think Tigger is in public domain yet, right? Wasn't he a later character? Because it was a bunch of stories that we collect in the book, right? So I'm not sure if he is there. I think he will come in part 2 or something.
As I recall, he was later on in the book, but he was in the book of published stories. So I would have thought that he came out at the same time, but I don't know. I'm just making stuff up.
I know very little about it, so I I think he published stories separately, and
Okay.
I think the Tigger came later. But I went to actually an exhibit about Winnie the Pooh when I was a few years ago to a museum to see the drawings, because everyone remembers the author, no one remembers the artist, right? And I think the artist is part of the product, right? And I remember the museum. One of the things in the museum, I remember the children who did recognize the sadness of the end. They're just running around there because you enter the museum and the first thing you see is the end quote, right? About if you know the ending of the book, it's very nice, it's very touchy. If you are you can sort of think about childhood passing and a lot of other things, right? It's sad, right? I came in almost in tears. This is very sad. Look, at the beginning of the tour, I'm already feeling emotional. All these children running around, honestly ruining the exhibit. Right, if I'm honest, right? So if it was adults only, where people can walk around to just think about childhood being in the past, I would have been much better than actually seeing children being in the childhood, not recognizing the sadness of this situation, right?
Yeah.
So I was displeased by the sheer volume of children I had to experience at that point.
So they talk about Disney adults sometimes. It sounds like you're maybe like a Winnie the Pooh adult, Victor.
No, I think a lot of kids' books, if the kids' books are done right, when you read this, you're
Hmm.
like, okay, I see that there are kind of layers. It's appealing to children, but there is something about it. Like I can see, like there is a message that's maybe not available to like a 7-year-old, right? That
Yeah.
you have to be a bit older to recognize. So I think most good kids literature is like that, where there is like kind of layers, and I mean, apart from like very basic books, like the dinosaur is dancing this way and that way. Okay, I don't think there is like a deep message in that book, right? But
Yeah.
anything that's written for like a 7 or 10-year-old kind of child, I think must have an adult component to it.
Right.
You've got to appeal to the adults that are reading it to the kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be wry smiles for the adults as they pick up on something crude
Yeah.
that a 7-year-old isn't
Yeah.
going to know.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. Well, let's switch things up. Jay mentioned maybe this means our attempt at clever banter worked, or maybe it was just too awkward for everyone. I don't know, but yeah, it's great to have everyone here. We're here today to talk about NX Cloud 3.0. We just launched this on Product Hunt, so let me share my screen real quick here. And there it is. We're live. We're number 18 right now. So I think that's good. I don't know. I'll drop this in the comments here so folks can check it out if you like. So yeah, if you haven't yet, go give us an upvote, and we'll be talking about it today. Probably be plugging this a couple more times before we're done. But yeah, we're here with. Let's go ahead and maybe introduce folks here too. Maybe Victor, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Victor. So I'm one of the co-founders of Annex, and I've been working on Annex Cloud for a few years.
Awesome. Joanna, how about you?
I mean, I've been with this bunch of reprobates since 2019.
Reprobates.
Yeah. I just thought I'd throw in a $5 word there.
I've got to Google this.
And been working on NXCloud UI mostly. Plus the back, the BFF. I love that term for a backend. For what, a couple of years?
Nice. So a reprobate is an unprincipled person, often used humorously or affectionately.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That's perfect.
I'm using it humorously, obviously, not seriously.
Yeah, well, I seem to recall from one of Victor's talks, monorepos are not a joking matter, correct? So yeah.
Very, very serious. Yeah.
Very serious. But Ben, what's up with you, man?
Yeah, I'm Ben. I'm on the NX core team since 2019. And I'm also working on the NX Cloud UI application.
Cool. So yeah, Ben, y'all did some updates here with the UI that I've been loving. So appreciate you
Thank
for
you.
that, man. It looks so cool, like the homepage, but also just the new dashboard. So
It's a lot of fun doing that.
yeah, I'll bet. We'll get into that a little bit more. But Alton, let's throw you up on the main stage. How are you doing, man?
Good. I'm Alton. I've been working on NX Cloud for almost 2 years now, and I work on the task runner and the API for that.
Cool. Yeah, lots of work going on in that recently, it seems like. See all
Definitely.
the flurries of Slack stuff going on. But yeah. With this group of, what was it, reprobates I learned from Johanna today, we're going to talk about NX Cloud. And one of the things I have, there's me Googling reprobate. But what
Just
is
as I throw
NX
that
Cloud?
bomb in, I'm gonna have to love you and leave you.
I know. Are you headed out already, Johanna?
I am.
Okay.
I'm gonna go.
All right. Well, we got you on screen. Thanks for coming by.
Well, much needed color and enjoy.
Exactly. Thanks, Johanna. Well, Johanna's gone, I guess, physically. Yeah, there she goes. Well, let's get Alton back in. Alton, where'd you go?
It's my never-ending personal hell of running Linux as my work machine.
Ah. Makes sense. Well, okay. Well, we've got here. So this is kind of my diagram of what's going on. Johanna left us, but she's still with us in spirit, and she's blonde now. So that's cool. But she's working on this project here. It's got a couple of apps in it. I guess this is a monorepo, right? Oh, excuse me. And then we've got some libraries that these apps depend on. And Johanna's going to do some tasks here, like she's going to run a build. And the first time, she's actually run it before, and we can see over here, this piece of the diagram kind of represents her local cache. So she's going to run a build on app 1, and part of what NX is going to do is trace down app 1 and its dependencies. So I guess it would be sort of this subsection of the graph. App 1, lib1, lib2 is going to build a hash over here. This is just random hash for example sake, but that build succeeds, and inside of her cache we've stored some documents that's the artifact built by her build step. So now if she were to run that build again and none of these dependencies has changed, the hash is going to stay the same. So she's able to just replay that build again. And the same thing can go for her build test for her build task for app 2. And it'll be a different subsection of the graph, so a different hash over here. But if she does like a test or a lint, those hashes will be preserved, and she'll be able to cache in or store those things in her cache. So if they ever get replayed again, she'll have them. But there's been some changes because we've brought in some more reprobates. I've got down here, we got Ben and Alton. We're pulling them in. And we were joking earlier. Ben's got some jaundice or something, but his hair
It's
looks
like
great.
liver disease, but now I have hair, so I'm okay.
Yeah, exactly. But so Ben and Alton join in. They actually have the same. They've cloned down the same repo, so they have the same graph coming in, and they actually have the same cache, or they could have the same cache. Like if they were to hash their dependencies, it would produce the same hash, but they don't have that cache yet because they haven't happened to run it, and potentially this could be kind of expensive. A build could last a couple minutes potentially. So what is NX Cloud? At the end of the day, I think the core of NX Cloud is bringing it up as a way of like distributing this cache so that as Johanna puts these things into her local cache, we can also store them out here into a distributed cache. That's the same exact thing, but now as we bring in Ben and Alton, we can kind of drop these caches locally into their own machines. Yeah. So Johanna did the original push, but then as Ben goes and does a build, I guess maybe I did the diagram wrong. I guess it's more lazy than what I just showed, where Ben would do a build and then we'd kind of pull that one thing in individually. But by adding this node to the graph here, it's kind of a way of connecting all of our developers together. So Ben and Alton, even though they've never run the build before, they could pull it down instantaneously. Essentially, I guess it's still there's still latency on this request, right? So there's still a little bit of network latency. So maybe instead of it would be like 30 milliseconds if it was local, but it'll be like a couple hundred milliseconds.
No, I mean it depends a little bit. So I can this is a very implementation, like a very deep dive in implementation, which we'll probably I don't know how much we want to go to, but there are a few points that are important to make. That the cache part of NX Cloud is granular, meaning that you don't just pull the whole of cache as you mentioned, right? Because the whole of cache can be huge. You can very easily have hundreds of gigabytes worth of cache for your workspace, right? That you want to use. You don't want to like stream that, right? To every CI agent or to every local machine is just no go, but even every CI agent, because it's going to take a very long time.
Well, granular and lazy, I think, are the two.
That's
main
right. So and the word and it's lazy in the sense that once if you run 5 things, we would know which 5 things are not available in your local cache, and we will start fetching them as quickly as the moment we know something, right? We would start fetching them. So really, we don't usually wait for a particular task to run before we're like, oh, okay, that thing is missing, right? If we
Right.
know the hash of the task in advance, we'll start fetching right away. So sometimes, in some cases, you will see some latency, right? Oftentimes, you don't see any latency because the artifacts will be already kind of pre-fetched in advance, right? So
Right.
it's kind of like it really depends on what you do. Hopefully, most of the time, you won't notice it that much locally. And in CI, it's definitely not noticeable because usually the pulling whatever artifacts I need to pull is pretty quick, right? So you usually don't see it.
Right. Yeah, well, whatever latency I've seen, it like I said, it tends to be, from what I've seen, pulling from a remote cache takes maybe like 200 milliseconds versus.
Yeah, it depends on where you are in the world, how big the artifact, how bad your connection is, a lot of other things, right? If you are in CI in a data center, right, then it would be reasonably fast because all the hops that you would have to go through locally wouldn't be there. If you are on a phone internet in a subway in New Zealand or something, right? Okay, then it will be a bit worse, So it kind of depends where you are and what the situation is.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess maybe this would be the diagram for how NX Cloud might be relevant for developers as they're developing locally. But I think the other big application for NX Cloud would be in sort of a CI pipeline. And I've got this little diagram to explain that a little bit. So we're zoomed way out because we have to be able to see the entirety of the standard CI pipeline. So this would be if you just had one machine that's running on CI. So whenever you make a PR, for example, we'll have a setup step here where you'll clone the repo, install dependencies, all that kind of stuff. And then we'll build, I think in this example, we kind of imagine 5 projects. And regardless of what happened in the PR, we'll just build them all, right? And then we'll test them all, and then we'll lint them all, and then maybe at the end, here's an end-to-end step. And maybe a caveat of this is like this end-to-end step, all the builds have to happen before we can do that end-to-end step, right? So the first optimization you might think to do, and you don't need NX Cloud for this, but you could split up to have multiple. I imagine the way I do this is like multiple jobs inside of your workflow file. If I'm thinking like GitHub Actions, and so you could split it up. So one machine does its setup, but then it just does the builds. And after the builds, we might as well run the end-to-end tests because we've just done the builds, so we can do that. And then we'll have another job. And so that will have its own machine. It's going to do the setup task, and then it's going to do the tests for us. And then lints, same thing, right? But if we look at it, just splitting this thing up into those 3 different jobs has effectively cut the efficiency of our CI pipeline by a third, which is a good thing, right? So
I think it cut the total time. The efficiency is probably better off, right?
Yes. So compute time is actually the same. It's actually maybe a little bit worse because we have to do 3 setups, right? But in terms of real time, we've cut real time by a third by doing this. But, and I think Mark is maybe onto it a little bit. Maybe. The first thing we could do here is just like look at the projects that are PR affected, right? So if we were to copy this down, and we'll say like optimizing with affected. Optimizing. I've been working on my typing, but I swear it's like a 20% debuff whenever I stream. But there we go. So optimizing with affected. Let's say the PR only affects maybe our project A. If we were able to use this, and again, we don't necessarily need NX Cloud for this. We can just use the NX affected command. We can essentially cut down for this specific PR any projects that aren't affected by the build or by the PR that we've just submitted. So looking at the comparison here between like a typical parallelized CI pipeline and then optimizing with affected, we've already cut things down a good bit. So yeah, Mark is saying Just saying, this seems like NX Cloud has done for a while. Oh yeah, we'll also cover 3.0 changes. We're kind of doing like an overview of what NX Cloud does in general. I think Victor, you mentioned like NX Cloud, the basics of it. Maybe coming back to the diagram over here. You kind of did this in a weekend, yeah?
Yeah. Okay. So yes, but I like if we go back to let's talk about the distribution part if you want to talk about. So basically, I think that the way you would think about it, right? If you split your build testing between multiple agents, and I think that's where the value proposition comes in, is that normal CI or sort of existing CI solutions, what they do is that they think about your CI in terms of machines, right? So you could say basically every CI run has two views. There is like a machine-oriented view saying I use 10 machines to run some things, right? And the other view is like a logical view, like I want to build 1,000 projects, right? Or test 1,000 or whatever, 100 projects, whatever that is, right? However many is affected, or variable number of projects based on the PR, right? And the existing CI solutions really think only about machines. There is no notion I want to build 100 projects. No, you basically pick, say, a set of machines. And I have 10 machines, and for every machine you're writing a recipe. You're saying this machine is going to build things. This machine is going to learn things, right? And because it's machine oriented, it's not what developers really think about. Developers don't care about the number of machines you use to do anything, right? Like in the same way, if you use like S3 or Elasticsearch and many other things, you don't tend to think about machines. You're just saying, I have this capacity to do things, like ability to do things, right? However, machines are managed behind, like underneath, it's really not that important to me, right? That's one big difference of an xCloud way of managing distribution comparing to like what you would normally do, right?
Yeah.
And the second part is that if you focus on the machine part, you basically would result in a lot of inefficiencies, right?
Right.
So because the machine part doesn't allow you to vary things, based on the number of projects that run or effect and lots of other factors, right? So you're going to have huge sways in efficiency. If you have, for example, you can optimize the number of machines such that if you build and test everything, it's roughly equal in terms of like utilization, right? So in this case, your CI can run, let's say, in 20 minutes, and different machines can run, let's say, from 15 to 20 minutes. Or 20 minutes. That would be, right? But if you suddenly you have affected, and now the one machine completes in 2 minutes, and the other one runs in 12 minutes, right? And you're like, okay, now your CI is still 12 minutes overall. So the 2-minute machine is wasted. Like you spawned it, you set it up, you wasted all those resources, then it did one small thing and it's done, right? So that's kind of the issue with the machine way of looking at stuff, which is what existing CI providers do exclusively, right? They're all about doing machine stuff. The bet on the nextcloud distribution is to do what some companies do, tech companies do already, which is to say that the right way is not to focus on machine, but use machine sort of as a mechanism to run some tasks, but really focus on the logical view of your CI, right? If your CI is about testing, linting, and what's affected, right, and that thing can run 1,000 tasks or 1,000 tasks, it doesn't depend on the PR. Well, that's what you need to focus on. Developers don't care how many machines have been used; they care how what tests failed, right? So I think that that's sort of the idea, right? Is that I mean, the diagram right now doesn't.
The diagram's falling apart, but I think like this piece of the diagram is trying to show kind of what you were talking about with the way most of the people think about it, where this build is actually hard coded, right? Like the build machine here is going to say, okay, take all of our projects and we're going to run build on each one of those, right? Versus maybe I can pull up the diagram that Ben made on the home screen for distributed task execution. I feel like this does a pretty good job of explaining what's going on, where it's not that we have like there's nothing about the agents here. Like we didn't define what each one of these agents did. We actually just said at sort of the orchestrator being run, just like do these 4 things, right? Is that getting what you were talking about, Victor?
Yeah, sort of. It basically like yes. Yeah, let's say that is a good like it's basically a big open-ended conversation, right? So I'm not sure like in what direction you want to go with it, right? So if you want to talk about the implementation of the T, we can talk about it, right? But the core difference is that the focus on machine, the focus on the logically what's going on in your CI is a big difference between running CI with an Nextcloud versus running CI with like an existing CI solution, like just using circles, right?
Right. So yeah, I guess those are the two big pieces. And let me drop here into the chat here. This is just the NX app. If you want to take a look at the diagrams yourself. I think Ben actually did a really good job at describing those. Would it be? I wonder, Victor. I'm just spitballing here. Would it be interesting to take a look at like maybe the workflow files for NX to kind of see?
No, I mean I would just go through changes for Nextcloud 3.0, right? So I wouldn't like I think if folks are interested in what Nextcloud does, right, they can go to an exit app and see what Nextcloud does, right?
Right.
Overall, and if as we go through changes, we would cover it, but I wouldn't go through like a CI config, especially because I think it's just going to be a huge derailment for like 30 minutes. We're going to talk about different like why we do certain things, like how CI should be done, etc. Like like I think that the format of a deep dive is an interesting format. We can do a deep dive, but it would be unrelated to kind of Cloud 3.0.
Cool. Well, I guess that's the broad in broad strokes what NXCloud is doing is the remote caching, and then using that remote caching to enable like this distributed task execution, which I think is really cool in and of itself. But I do want to talk about what happens with NXCloud 3.0. So what makes it a 3.0? Maybe Victor, I'll throw you on the main stage to talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, in general, the way we do, for example, how do we do NX work, right? So people who are not familiar with our open source work is that we devise some sort of features for NX that we are going to implement in 6 months, whatever, right? And we land them as they are landing, right? And then at the very end, we're saying, we've learned enough. We're going to call it the next major version of NX. And usually some breaking changes land around that time. We generally don't land a lot of breaking changes, but like some risky changes, I would say. Not breaking, but like risky changes. Potentially breaking in some edge cases, right? Would land at that point. But really, most of the changes would be landed already. So we don't do this like there is a new major, everything is broken, right? The major simply means we've built enough so we can call it a new version. If you're familiar with VS Code or IntelliJ, for example, the way they would do stuff, they would land stuff, and you say, that's a new version, right? They would give it a name to say enough has landed since last time we called the version. So if you weren't paying attention, you should pay attention now because a lot has changed. That kind of situation, right? So that's the idea. Everything is landing on a weekly basis to prod now. Okay, so it's not like we were holding something back for the 3.0 part. It's more like if you only look at cloud a year ago, when we talked about 2.0, right? Everything has become a lot better. So you should look again, right? A lot of things have been updated. In particular, we completely rewrote the UI, right? So the UI is very different now, both design-wise and implementation-wise, right? We updated the backend story, made things a lot more efficient. Across the board, we changed so many things that it's basically just a signal to folks who, because you cannot pay attention to every release note that's going on and be like, okay, I wonder what's going on this week. Like no one should be that attentive to any project, right? But if you are roughly kind of following things, right? At least once in a while, you should be like, I wonder what happened since a year ago, since 6 months ago, if I can take advantage of it in my workflow, right?
Yeah,
that's why it is it did a 3.0 because of just the sheer volume of changes that happened since the last time we talked like this, right? And we can talk through the changes, one by one. But just basically, no matter where you look, it's different now, right? In a better way, right?
Yeah.
So if you only looked at it a year ago, you should look again because a lot of things, are not the same.
Yeah, I'm sharing my screen here to show the new dashboard. Ben, I was talking about how much I love it. So, do you want to maybe talk a little bit now, Ben, about some of the recent UI improvements?
Yes, though you will have to be a little bit more precise because we basically rewrote everything.
You redid everything, right? So
yeah. We started on a screen by screen basis, but we ended up doing all the screens. We think we can talk about what the technicity part, or the technology, what we are using, but we also did a lot of improvement on the application itself. So, like, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, let's talk about. Well, there was we kind of had a shift here, right? In terms of the technologies behind the scenes. We went from. Well, I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah. So how much time do we have? Because I need to.
Let's try to go
This
through
is a
like,
long discussion. It can be a very long discussion. So
Yeah,
I need
sure.
to-
Let's go for like around 10 minutes.
Yeah. Okay. So the short story is we started working on NX Cloud with the following technologies: Angular and Material for the UI, which is roughly what we were doing. Also GraphQL, and that's pretty much it. So Angular, GraphQL, and Angular Material. Now we are in the migration process still, but we are not using Angular anymore. We are using React, and we are using Tailwind CSS. So no, there is actually no Angular code now on the new version that is in prod, and it is also much faster because along the way, while we were doing the migration, we were also improving on things and try to optimize the request and stuff like this. Now, in the future, I mentioned we were using GraphQL. We are still using GraphQL, but we will go to finalize that migration by using Remix, and we will basically ditch the custom API that we have, and no more GraphQL.
Wow, no more GraphQL. What's going to replace it? Is it like a more BFF kind of architecture?
We're basically gonna use the data loaders from Remix. So
Okay, got it.
would be that way we will be able to not using GraphQL and also not have that BFF API anymore. So it will
Right.
streamline and simplify everything.
Yeah. So it wouldn't be there's an API app and then there's a front end app. It's just there's the
It's just
Remix
an
app.
app.
Got it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. That's the goal.
We got all kinds of characters here in the chat now too. I wanted to just acknowledge them quick. Sorry to derail you, Ben, but Lars is in the chat.
He's a friend.
Yeah, he's a friend. Jay's in the chat. We saw him before, and look who showed up. It's Brandon Roberts, former
All friends.
Narwhalian / NXian, I guess. So all friends. So good to see y'all in here and chatting it up. But yeah. So okay. So there was the technology change that y'all had on the front end side, or on the NX Cloud side. But there's also, just showing my screen again, it looks so beautiful now. Was there like a design iteration y'all went through to figure this piece out?
Yes. We basically changed the technology, and also because of that, we also wanted to refresh a little bit the UI. So we kind of rethink. It's basically the same element as before, but they have been cleaned up and put some fresh paint on them. But we also try to come up with a better defined and refined DX. So there are some elements that were created from scratch. Like you can see the breadcrumb at the top level navigation, where you can actually select if you have multiple organization, and if you have multiple workspaces, you can select those stuff, and you can see also the what is the type of plant that you have on your organization, because before we weren't focusing on that stuff, but it's always a good way to know and to let your team knows, okay, so we are on that plant, so everything is available, or we have some restriction. And also another way where that's not the only screen that we improved. We improved the binning one. We improved the settings. If you go to the settings and the VCS integration, we have a simple flow with more information and access to the documentation directly from there. We also have better settings for your organization. If you go on settings, you should be able to see what's going on here.
I'm trying to make sure I don't show anything sensitive. I guess this would all be public, because this is like one of our public ones this is
Yeah,
the one I've been working on with TanStack, so we can actually kind of see all of the projects we've connected for them so far. So query table,
all those
router, and form.
workspaces.
Yeah.
And we also simplify a lot the connect to a new workspace. And that also from the package perspective, so the NX side of things, but also on the NX Cloud application side, where you basically have only one command to run now and one link to click, and it's done.
Right.
So yeah, a lot of improvement on that. And we are all always aspiring to get feedback from you. So if you find something, or if you think something could be better, please let us know. We love feedbacks on that.
One of the things you didn't mention this, I was trying to find maybe one of our projects that had something in progress. Maybe this one from.
Oh, you're
Jason's.
talking about the DT?
Yes, this is one of my favorite ones. I think it's. Do I need to go to branch details from here? Yeah, there it is. I love this one too. So I think Nicole had done the original iteration of this. And
Yeah,
that looked
big
great.
shout out to Nicole.
Yeah, did she do the updated version here as well? Because this looks so clean to me.
Yeah, we did it together. She is the one that created all those little lines and animation. So this is great.
Yeah. So this is kind of visualizing how this task is getting distributed out between all the different agents that we had set up. And Mark in the chat here mentioned the VCS integration here. So yeah, that's a great piece here too. I guess we kind of saw that as I was like running through links here, but let me hit back a couple more times so we can see this is actually just the PR on GitHub. But because we have the VCS in, Alton, you worked on this stuff, didn't you? The VCS integration?
Yep.
So we've got now, I think there's improvements here too. You can correct me if I'm wrong, but the comments updates more often now to show us like when something's in progress.
Yeah,
Correct?
so the previous version of the GitHub bot, and this is reflected also with the Bitbucket and GitLab bots, they previously ran off of webhooks. So webhooks are great. They make it easy. We know when events are happening. But because when you're using NX Cloud, we have an idea of when your different runs are starting and ending and going in progress or have failures or things like that, we can actually flip the model on its head. And so instead of waiting for GitHub to give us information, we can actually just tell GitHub, this is the status. And it's much more real time for GitHub and GitLab. The platforms themselves are smart enough, so they'll actually live update the comment as those are coming in. Bitbucket unfortunately doesn't do this, but if they started supporting it, that would be cool. And so now
Throw in shade at Bitbucket. I like it. They probably deserve it. I shouldn't say these things live, but yeah.
So now when you're on your PR report, you'll be able to see things when your commands start up and when they're finishing, and that'll get all nested and nice here, and you can click into them to see your statuses directly in the app.
Right. And Victor, I think this maybe speaks to a little bit the distinction you were making here, where like if I look at my comment, I can actually see the things I actually care about, which is which of my tasks have completed and what's going on. Like it doesn't matter what machine they're going on.
So the end-to-end target right now runs on whatever 8 machines, right? But from your point of view, it's not that relevant, right? So I think that's the big distinction as we go, and maybe we'll touch on it later with what's coming next, right? I think that's a big distinction with the existing. I don't call them legacy CI providers, but like the current state of, because they are once we have everything we want to have out, right? Then we can start throwing shade and call things legacy. At this point, that's not the case, right? That it's very machine oriented, right? Because it's very machine oriented. It's kind of very, and like our NX repo is a relatively small. I mean, not the giant repo, but that's like. We use 9 machines to run every CI or something like that, right? But imagine a larger repo. Like if you're at an enterprise, it's not uncommon to have 50 machines running your every CI, right? It just happens, right? So at which point focusing on the machine is just irrelevant. And there are too many machines to like you really just want to know, I'm testing everything. Show me what failed across the machines. The machine part is smooth, right? that's a big part of what we are trying to achieve, is to basically move away from this low level view of view in CIS, and I like put it on Ubuntu VM, right? And if that Ubuntu VM, I'm going to and to say instead, you know what, I want to run 5 commands that have dependency between each other across however many VMs you think is best,
Yeah.
within some parameters of reasonableness, right?
Yeah.
And if a small PR, let's spawn 3 VMs and run those 3 VMs, all those commands in the most efficient way possible. If you have a giant PR, okay, maybe we'll go to 20 VMs, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of don't have to worry about it very much. You get good utilization and a lot less compute, better control of like lower cost and things like that, right? So
Right.
that's the idea, and we are kind of right now slowly or fast, depending on how you look at it, moving towards it, right? We're making improvements, and the next 6 months we'll make a few more improvements, and then this view of the world will be fully realized, right?
Right. Well, yeah, I think part of it too is just like this is a solid signal right here. In my mind.
And to be clear, when we look at it, at no point, even like an X repo runs on Circle that then uses cloud. So Circle
Right.
CI is there, and Circle CI is great. And I actually like what they're doing. So
Yeah,
really good to etc.
Yeah,
But really, I never go to Circle. Right? I don't want to go
Right.
to Circle to see the logs, because it's like it's just too many things are happening across different machines. The Circle logs are very messy and not helpful, right?
Yeah.
So I actually like, so basically Circle becomes like an implementation detail most developers should not care about, and that's what we talk about when we in a joking fashion talk about liberating enterprise from Jenkins, right? And that really people don't want to go to Jenkins and go through Jenkins, look at the 30 machines that ran the PR, find the machine number 17 and number
Yes.
25 that failed, click on the logs for those 2 machines,
Yeah.
find the error in a giant text file, essentially, right? So
Yeah,
like,
well,
I see what's going on, right?
It's
wanna
probably
be
real
like, "What's
small
failed?"
here, but this is like 4,000 lines of log.
Yeah, because
to like
things
rip
are
through.
happening, right? So
Yeah.
really, most of it is not what you want to see. The scope, the version, like this, you're looking at one agent. There
Yeah,
are 8
and
agents.
this is
right?
one out of 8 machines. So there's
Yeah, exactly.
8 other or 7 other
Yes.
4,000 line logs to parse
Exactly
through.
right.
Versus like here's the strong signal like we were talking about.
Yeah, you click
Let's
on
see
this
what's
and you see like.
yeah. Let's see
exactly.
what happened with this one. I don't really know what's going on.
I mean,
with
this is a
but-
small one, so you can
Yeah.
see that there are 3 tasks that run. You can expand. You can view the logs for those tasks. If something failed, you would have seen failure, right? But I think that the bottom line is, like moving away from machine view of your CI is what I think in the long run gives you better ergonomics, right? Simplifies your model because you just don't need to worry about it, and it kind of gives you overall a better ability to scale, right? Because
Right.
now if you have a repo that goes from something built by 5 people to something built by 500 people, fundamentally your CI looks the same, right? The CI execution thing that cloud provides has to scale appropriately, right? So
Yeah.
that's the idea. What is it? The analogy would be going like enabling garbage collector, and instead of doing things by hand. Where yes, in some cases you still want to manage machines by hand and be very kind of operationally involved in all the stuff. But for a lot of folks, most of the time, being able to just say, you know what, I want some other machinery that's built by smart engineers to take care of this part of the story for me, so I can just write stuff, and it would be pretty speedy most of the time for a repo of any size, while providing a very good dev ergonomics, is the answer. So maybe not for everyone. If you're running like super optimizing something in your CI, and you're like building native, I don't know, you have some weirdest edge case, okay, sure. But for the vast majority of people we encounter, they don't care how many jobs exactly GitHub Actions is spawning. They just want to do the logical commands they want to do, right?
Right.
Yeah, and you also don't want to have like a dedicated team that has sole purpose of doing that.
yeah, exactly. If you remove a huge part of this cost, right, the same smart people can do more interesting things, right, rather than like basically shuffling these 10 machines and commands between them, right, trying to arrange it in a way that's reasonably efficient most of the time, which is very hard, close to impossible, right? So instead you're saying, we can do it for you, probably in a better way automatically, so you can focus on other things, like making DX better, optimizing some parts of the workflow, right? Which is so it's not about letting those people be on the street or whatever, necessarily, right? It's more about prioritizing so they can not worry about some things. It's like when you use S3, you don't worry how those files are stored, but you can worry about other things, about like other aspects of the developer that otherwise you would be just ignored, right?
There's a principle named by this. It's that like as things become more efficient, the work just ends up going elsewhere. So you you don't end up putting people out of their jobs. You just put them onto more important stuff.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
So yeah, cool. Well, we with 3.0 or recently, one of the big changes here too was the pricing change. So Alton, I think you worked on that a good bit. Do you want to jump in and explain a little bit about what happened there? And maybe Victor, you can chime in here too. But
Sounds good.
Yeah. So we received a lot of feedback from the previous pricing model. And the chief thing was, how do we predict what our usage is going to be? This number isn't consistent enough for us. It's not something that we have enough insight into. And as a developer, when you're trying to sell to your management, it can be difficult to get them to understand the value of time saved, right? Time saved it's kind of just like a ethereal metric. You know where it's useful, but not everybody will. So with NX Cloud 3.0, we've tried to simplify this down into a way that's more communicable for you to your stakeholders or whoever signs off on your billing, as well as something that should be more consistently predictable for your team. And so the way that works is we now have a unit that we call CI pipeline executions. So this is not the same as runs that you might see, but this is more akin to when you go onto your CI platform of choice, like GitHub Actions or Circle CI, and you see what they call a workflow. It mostly maps one-to-one to those. So that means every time you push up to your PR, that would count as a single CI pipeline execution. Now, what we've done here is before deciding to go with this approach, we took a look at some of the metrics from existing workspaces, and we were able to see that the vast majority of workspaces were computing with under 300 CI pipeline executions per month. This means that most of the customers that we had would be able to maintain the free tier. If you're a heavy user, or your organization is a group of heavy users, we now have the Pro plan for you. So the Pro plan gives you some extra stuff. There's a priority support package. You can add more users to be administrators, which is useful for things like making sure your account's not locked or keeping billing. We've got some exciting things for analytics coming, and a variety of other differentiating features that we're going to see over the course of the rest of the year. So the way that you can evaluate your workspace against this is, and actually, let's not scare anybody. So this took effect last Wednesday, but nobody's going to be impacted by it until June 1st happens. So you've got basically 6 weeks from our announcement to try and get internal sign-off. Yes.
Quick comment here from Sunny, but yeah, go ahead, Alton. I'll let you field it.
Yeah, Sunny, that's correct in most cases. So if you're using like the Narwhal CI GitHub Action reusable workflow, that's actually configured in such a way that will be optimal for your setup, where you're only getting one single CI pipeline execution and it handles all of the setup for you. So we would really recommend that you use that or try and emulate that for your own setup. It's just the best way to use Nextcloud. So throughout the May billing cycle, where we've started spinning this stuff up, and it's active for the first time, what you can do as an organization admin is go to your organization settings and look at billing and plans. And there we have a view for you that shows your current CI pipeline executions, as well as...
do open source organizations have this screen too? Or I guess they probably wouldn't, right?
They do. You can go see it on here. Yep.
Okay, how do I get to there?
So you're on the organizations. You can click on settings here.
Yep.
And then you'll go to billing and plans.
Oh, cool.
And here you can see what your current status is for CI pipeline executions, as well as where we project you'll be based on current data at the end of the month.
Cool. So it looks like, I think this is this for the entire org, or is this, yeah, this must be for the entire org, right?
Yep, this is for the whole org. We also have a plan for open source that you can write in and apply to us for, where you'll get free unlimited usage forever. So if you are an open source project, feel free to write in and we'll take a look and get you set up there.
Yeah, I'd love to highlight this too, because I love that we do this. I don't think it gets enough spotlight, but yeah, for any open source projects where it's just unlimited. I guess it's the equivalent of the Pro, but for free for the most part. I guess
that's right.
Support is a little bit different, but
I mean, it says basic because, like, really, it means that uh, technically we probably should care about people who actually pay us money because they are the real customers, right? And like, but we tend to, care about open source as well very much because we are, obviously an open source company. We've been doing open source for many, many years. So we won't abandon the open source project, right? We're doing our best to help open source project, not in terms of just providing support, but have, to make sure that they use the cloud well on Expo. So like I think open source project who engage with us, I hope appreciate the amount of effort we put into developing that relationship and making sure the cloud works for them well or Next work for them well, right? So it actually goes beyond all, like it's a very very high touch support in some cases, right? So so we do care about OSS. But yes, so if you are open source or pro, right, you get the high priority support because we sometimes get a lot of support questions. And some of those questions are kind of very, like some of them pretty basic. I don't know how to do this. Okay, read these docs. In this case, it'll be the same for any tier. It's very simple, right? But some can get pretty involved. We're like, my workspace is really weird, and I've written it in a very unique way while being half asleep on a keyboard that only half of the keyboard works. That's why I have some peculiar things in there. Can you help me sort out the cache? And you're like, okay, that usually takes some time to kind of to figure out what could be going on in there, right? So that's where we we will try our best for folks who our customers, right? We still try our best for everyone. It's more like given sometimes the sheer volume of different questions people post, right? It's easier for us to prioritize folks who are subscribers.
Yeah.
And add a few items to what Alton said is that I think one of the things that yes, the pricing we had prior to that, which was time saved based, which is the metric you can still see. It's like was a bit. It's not even that I think it made sense. It's more like because it was so unusual from anything else
Right.
folks saw, right? It was kind of a bit challenging for folks to understand how to deal with it, right? In terms of not just predicting, but how to think about it, right? We thought it's clever when we designed it originally. I mean, clearly, clever things shouldn't,
Right. I remember when Jeff first mentioned it to me, I loved the idea because it aligned our incentives so well. Like,
yeah, exactly. So like there is, but the second part, it's mainly useful for when your product is only the cache. If your product is just a distributed cache, then yes, time saved by the cache is something you can measure. If your product manages distribution, but there is no, like cache is still there, but it actually just orchestration bit is separate, right? Or your product has the UI part or the web app part. Like there are lots of parts of the product, right, that we've built over the last 2 years that like in no way relate to that metric. All right, it's just nothing about that metric. It talks about the distribution, or like the overall orchestration bit, the UI or anything like that, right? So it ended up being just like being kind of out of place. The number of times we had to like point to docs and say, this is what exactly we mean. And folks would be like, oh, like it just caused a lot of, it wasn't a perfect fit for the product now. And I think it was a bit too clever for our own good. So the current metric is much simpler. You know how many CI executions you have, pipeline executions. Why you can go to, I don't know, Azure or Circle or GitHub Action, just say, show me stats for the last 3 months. It will be like, on average, you have that many. That is it. Like you will know it 30 seconds into looking at it, and you kind of have like a rough idea of what's going to happen there. I mean, obviously, usage can go up or down, but it's you have some idea very quickly, right? So it's a much simpler thing to measure and to see, etc. So I think overall, simple things often win because they're just much easier, right, for folks to do. So one extra thing I want to mention that everyone who was already a subscriber, right, because we do want people to remain happy, to be happy, right, and any sort of change is painful. No matter how good or bad change is, it's just people don't like things being different, right? Generally speaking, at first, until they get used to it, and then like, now I love it, right? But so that the every existing subscriber, right, we moved them to the pro plan and gave them a 3 months trial period to make sure that they basically use cloud for free, right, till August, right, so they can figure out, I don't talk to their management and say, like basically a good buffer period for folks to sort out within the organization, like whether it works well, right, and do some adjustments if needed, right. So that's sort of the was the idea with the trial, but is to say thank you for the subscribers who paid us when cloud was not as good as it is right now, which I think is great. So folks decided to do it, but also to make the transition period less challenging. So they, because really, we want to make sure folks don't feel like, oh my God, right now everything is different, and now I have to talk to my manager and ask, is it still okay? No, you have plenty of time, the whole summer to find the manager, right? Whatever they're hiding, right? And and talk to them.
Cool.
Can I add a little bit of information also?
Yeah.
It's also not just about caching and the distributed task execution system. It's also about the application that you get, the application that allows you to see all your work, what is going on inside your repository, who or how your commands are executed, and the ability to debug them, to compare them, and also the ability to get statistics on your monorepo life or your workspace life. So you have that caching, you have that DTE or orchestration, but you will have more and more insights into what is going on in your workspace live. And this is really something that we are working on, and that will take place into the application. And you also have access to that little knowledge via the NX console. So there is an integration with NX Cloud inside NX console, and yeah, that's what is coming.
Yeah, very cool.
The app will be more prominent.
Yeah. So it sounds like, I think it was on the pricing plan. It said advanced analytics versus basic analytics for those more pro tiers too. I guess maybe we're getting into the stuff that's coming up now. But can you talk? Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, one thing that to reinforce what Ben is saying, I think most organizations focus on performance part because they think, well, things need to be faster, but really, most of the time things start falling apart. The large ship is on the ergonomic side of things, right? So if you have a repo with 200 projects in it, which is not that big, right? Like 200 labels in a few apps or whatever, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Ergonomically, it's already very challenging unless you have some special tools that help, right? So like a lot of the times, the first thing that becomes a big deal is the ergonomics part, where folks are like, well, now we have this bigger repo, and the output is crazy, right? And everything is like hard to find. I really don't like it. Let's go back to the old model, right? So that is the thing that a lot of, because it's not quantifiable, it's not a number. It's more like a quality of life thing that it's very important, but you don't experience it right away, right? Because you don't experience it like as a number, right? Folks don't value it as much. Where I think that's it, like a lot of the value is that, right? If you look at CI providers and you compare, popular CI providers, what's different about them is not the performance part. I doubt lots of people who choose GitHub Actions over something else are measuring how quickly it spawns agents or anything like that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen. What do they measure it on? On one thing only. Is it easy to use?
Yeah.
Right? Are my logs presented in a way that I understand? Right? Is my integration with GitHub meaningful? Right? So it's all just DX. Right? Like there is very little. Let's measure who is a bit quicker at running things. That basically doesn't happen. Right?
Right.
So like the DX part is crucial, right? And we kind of get it on some levels, right? So if you ask people what's faster, Circle or GitHub Actions, what does it even mean, right? It's like the main focus there is what do I enjoy using more, all right? What seems more straightforward to me? What is more flexible when I need it, right? It's so the app part is a big deal of that. If you want to figure out why I have a cache miss, if you don't have an app, you just cannot. It's very hard, right? Like, because now you need to put a SSH in your agent on CI trying to run things and replicate the miss you had. Okay, how many people can do that? All right. Whereas an app is trivial. You say, it's a cache miss. Why is that? And we're like, because that thing is different. You're like, okay, I understand. Right. So things like that are very hard to see the value of, sort of abstractly, because it's not just a number. It is really just, a quality of life thing.
Yeah, I'm trying to show like the near misses stuff here, but yeah. Exactly. But yeah. So I think the DX is a huge part of it too, and like I think we mentioned Jenkins. It's like the antithesis maybe of what we're trying to be. Like, not to put them down, they've been solid in some way for a long time, but the DX, that's really what we're trying to get. And like I think to our credit, I don't want to toot our horn too much here, but this view right here, like ignoring the near misses, but just being able to come here and filter down to, like, I don't know, let's find this felt one, like that's awesome. Here's all the targets that we ran, or the tasks we ran for this one project, and see exactly what happened with them. And like you said, I think earlier, Victor, these all succeeded, so they're probably not that interesting. But if there's a failure, like this is exactly the UI I'd want to see, to be able to diagnose what went wrong there. So yeah.
Also, one thing to remind everyone is that because of the cache and the way that we are optimizing your CI performance on your machine, you're supposed to pay less CI as well. So it should also actually save you a little bit of money.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so this is why I like the alignment of incentives, but but I think we're nice fellows for the most part. We don't mind saving everyone some money, but yeah, I just wanted to highlight some of the comments here from Mike here. Just merged the commit to add NX Cloud today. That's awesome. So yeah, there were some comments here. I didn't want to like ignore them, right? I think Mark mentioned some of these things are going to cost a bit more for him. I think a lot more, because I think he was on, the old $29 plan. But for some of our larger customers and potential customers, one of the ones me and Alton were looking at one I think last week. It ended up the new pricing model actually ended up being a little bit cheaper for them when we ran everything through by, I think, like by $100 a month. So
yeah, it really depends on how you use it. So we tried to,
Yeah.
when we sampled folks, because we did the sampling to figure out what makes sense, to estimate the value, etc. Right? And the sample, seems was pretty reasonable, where like no one would go, like, or very, like in some cases everything is possible, right? But
Right.
by and large, for existing like pro users or enterprise users, people who have large workspaces, you wouldn't see like a 10x difference. It was more in line with what they would have before. Just the model is a bit more predictable. So, but it is it is a sound point that for a lot of folks, if your use case was very different and you never used a cache before, right? Or if we only charged you for the cache before, then yes, now we estimate the value we provide differently, right?
Yeah, like Yuri says in the comments here, our whole mission across all products is developer productivity. So I think hopefully we're doing a good job on that. Ryan seems to agree, pushing for NX Cloud in their org. Yeah, I could not imagine working without NX Cloud. I'm getting to that point. Maybe I could probably imagine. That's an overstatement, but it's close.
Zach, you've worked with some clients before. You've got the imagination to take you back there.
I do. Grepping through Jenkins logs. I think I remember Victor and I being on a support call one time, and Victor was like, "How did you find this?" And I was like, I opened up a log and hit Control F for an error.
Yeah. All you need to
That's how we
download.
found it.
So many times it's like download all logs as a folder, as like a zip file. Because most of the things are just so bad with any reasonable, like with large enough. Like just get a zip file, unzip it, open in, whatever, VS Code, IntelliJ, just have a folder of files, and that's my CI log. That's a very, unfortunate state of the world. If that's how you need to, because to be clear, for a large enough workplace, you have this problem in any CI provider, right? Existing CI provider, right? It's only a matter of scale. One small project, everything will work. 100 more things won't work. 1,000, that's it, right? Okay, so yes, I'm supposed to be.
We gotta get out of here so Victor can get to Jeff. Sorry, Jeff. But yeah, thanks everyone for dropping by. Alton and Ben, thanks y'all for coming in, and to Johanna. This was great. Make sure to let me throw the product hunt on here. You can get out of here if you need to, Victor. I can wrap up. See ya, man. And I'll throw in just one last time. If you haven't already, please check out the Product Hunt link and give us an upvote there. And yeah, cheers, Mark. Thanks for stopping by today. It was great to see you in chat. And everyone else, Brandon and Lars, and I saw Nacho come in. Great to see you all. And yeah, it was a fun stream. So,
Yep.
so thanks all. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
What happened to your dog? Did you banish him, or is he underneath right now?
He's like been climbing all over me for the past 15 minutes. So.
Yeah, we definitely need to end the stream. He needs some Alton time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, cheers, everyone. We'll catch you all next time.
Bye.